Yeah, a lot of this will kind of like piggyback off of what we were talking about up there with like the different patterning of the species, like what to plant next to what, and how to design multi-layered systems. There's two main concepts you can kind of have in your left and right pocket when thinking about agroforestry design. One is succession, which is layering different species in time. So different species have different life cycles. Some are annual, some are biannual, live 3 or 4 years, and then some live way longer, decades or centuries. And so you can layer those different species in time and get away with a harvest of an annual while planting perennials, which Sean got at with stuff in Guatemala. And there's stratification, which is layering different species in space. So that gets at species that are normally in the lower layers of a forest or the canopy layer of a forest. How do we create human-made forests where each species takes up the different layers? And so natural succession, it's the unstoppable force of nature which evolves systems from simple to complex. And we can see it in this grassland that if it was left unmanaged, it would turn into shrubland and then forest. Oh yeah. And so agroforestry kind of like harnesses this force of nature and speeds it up and optimizes it. So you can, like, the swales outside, the rows of black locust, that is a speeding up succession to a forest than nature would normally do. And so, yeah, it says agroforestry condenses this normally multi-decade process into multi-year, because this is just 3 years old, but they were planted. So if this grassland was just left for 3 years, there would not be those tall black locusts yet. So we're speeding it up. And then stratification is often called like multi-strata agroforestry. It's just layering the different species that all harmonize with each other to create like a functional ecosystem, essentially. And what we're doing with the swales is creating a linear forest. And so rows are really efficient for management, which Contour Lands also does in Guatemala. It's all linear because a lot of food forests are established kind of in a grid, but that can make the management pretty complex a lot of the time. And so rows just really simplify making a multi-strata system, but it's all linear. So that really helps with the design. And so my obsession within agroforestry is this type of agroforestry called synthropic. It is such a great rabbit hole. I think it's a profoundly effective design methodology, and it has a certain kind of certain language that I'll get into, not to like just bombard with like different phrases, but like simple use of language that simplifies those two concepts, stratification and succession. It was developed by this man, Ernst Goetsch, in the 80s. He bought hundreds of hectares, I believe, in Brazil that was degraded cow pasture and proceeded to plant it out heavily with seeds of the native forest. And he planted such a diversity of support species and a density of support species. And he noticed that during a hurricane, so his main crop is cacao, and he noticed during a hurricane that took down a lot of his taller support trees, that the next year or that following season, the cacao did really well. And so that was like an observation of a natural process of more better production and fruiting of the cacao following disturbance. And this was a natural disturbance, a hurricane, but he kind of said, maybe this disturbance thing is a tool that we can use, and it has a whole range of benefits on the system. And so synthropic agroforestry is really characterized by heavy, dense planting of support species and heavy pruning. And that density and heavy pruning kind of go hand in hand, where if you planted as densely as he does, or as we do, with trees being 18 inches apart for the projects, it would get crowded out and unhealthy, and things would actually start to compete. But the pruning rejuvenates it and kind of optimizes the growth, because a lot of growth can happen after pruning. Yeah, and it deeply mimics succession and stratification, I think, more than other forms of agroforestry, just because the density of planting involves planting early succession species, middle succession, and late succession all at once, and also planting them densely in space. So you're just using both those two central tools, essentially. So that's Synthropic. Yeah. Oh yeah, and the name has nothing to do with it being developed in the tropics. It's the opposite of entropic, which is systems going from complex to simple, like fire or something, where the energy is getting dispersed. But nature is inherently syntropic, where it goes from simple to complex. So it's just kind of a name that mirrors just what you can observe in nature. And there's 5 principles that really like interconnect with each other, and 2 of them are succession and stratification. Keep soil covered, obvious, don't need to say much more about that. Maximize photosynthesis, that's what the density gets at. Like any photon hitting bare ground or even just ground, that could be captured by a leaf. And so they go very hard on just trying to capture all of the sunlight that you possibly can. And the way to do that is through stratification. And then with all that stratification and plant biomass you have all the mulch to cover the soil. So it all just kind of like interrelates to each other. And management is kind of the linchpin that holds all those together, because if you just planted these systems out with all this awesome diversity and density, it would just slowly senesce and get unhealthy. So management is the key, like human interaction is the key to all that, to make it all work. And yeah, just talked about stratification, but this is just simple, like simpler language that's within syntropic agroforestry, that I found helpful and kind of answered some confusion I had when I was learning about the different layers of the food forest, because you hear all these terms, you hear canopy, subcanopy, understory, overstory, and I thought it was about, and it often is about, like the size of the tree. Like, oh, it's a big tree, it must be high strata, it's called, like the high layer. Or if it's a small tree, it must be low. But it's not necessarily the case. It's more about light, not height. And so it's more like this simple, just emergent, high, medium, low is about the plant's ideal light requirements. And so emergent are plants like palm tree, and tulip poplar, and let's see, other emergent in this climate, paulownia, that really need full sun. To the degree that they don't get full sun, they suffer. That's kind of characteristics of emergent, and they're ones that often shoot up and have the highest space in the layers. And then high is most of our fruit and nut trees, which like full sun, but can deal with some dappled shade or temporary shade from anything high above it, but they really do need close to full sun. And then medium is happy with dappled shade its whole life, or could take some full sun through part of the year. And then, yeah, kind of to get at it being based on light and not height. So corn would be an emergent species needing full sun, but something like dogwood, which can get 20 or 30 feet, is more medium and can deal with dappled shade its whole life. And so I just really liked it. That just kind of clicked for me. It being more about light and not height, because that's really the thing that matters. Because things are different heights in their lifetime, and physically take up different layers in their lifetime because it evolves over time. But it has, light requirement is just, I think, more central, or just very important. A little bit about density. Tommy mentioned that we've seen better results with the trees and shrubs getting planted a foot or 18 inches apart versus 3 feet. And I think that's just worth doubling down on, that they grow faster and they support each other on year 1. And creates a beneficial microclimate sooner. So they're all like helping each other in year 1 versus their roots start talking to each other and nitrogen is shared on year 3 or 5. Whereas if it's closer, they're supporting each other like the first season, and the system just like evolves way better with that density, 18 inches versus 3 feet apart. With the density that we're planting, it's not the final spacing. Like we'll have fruit trees planted 3 or 5 feet apart sometimes, but it's just about what lives, and you're kind of rolling the dice and hedging your bets. Like, oh, if the persimmons don't do well, if the chestnuts do well, you just have more likelihood of like a better final system emerging with the density. I think that's like a good part of the density as well. And these are just some pictures of some syntropic systems where you have an alley crop of, looks like zucchini in the middle of some tree lines which have the usual suspects, like probably eucalyptus and banana, which that's like the emergent, and eucalyptus and banana are used a lot in the tropics. And then getting away with an annual crop in the first few years. And often you'll have like rows of annuals, but then also rows of grass or biomass to feed the annuals and feed the tree lines. And that's in the first several years that the grass does well because the system isn't like shaded. And so that you're really, like that row of grass and biomass is just pumping, energy and nutrients and photosynthesis into the system, and you're just constantly feeding it. It's just like a well-oiled machine with that row of grass being, growth and productivity versus bare ground, growing your own mulch. And then that's a picture of, I think someplace in Italy that's growing lettuce in right under a tree row and that just kind of shows like lettuce doesn't need full sun. It can take some dappled shade and maybe even is happier. So you're getting away with an annual right next to your tree line. And this is another picture of Italy, and you can kind of see the different species all densely in their nice homes, and the mulching, the heavy mulching on either side of the tree line, I think is a really good pattern that you see in a lot of syntropic systems. And that's just how you efficiently mulch a tree line anyways. And it's also just easy if you have lines of biomass. It's just so easy to cut and plop over. You don't need to think about, oh, where do I put this bundle of mulch? It just goes in that line. And it's really just efficiency is the name of the game. You're putting it right where it needs to be, where it like feeds the plants in the best way. A little bit about the main support species. So we talked about black locust, which are all the ones out there, and then there is some false indigo out there as well. And so these are our 2 main nitrogen fixers. Within any given project, let's say it's 600 trees, we've been doing half of the total trees are either these nitrogen fixers. So it'll be, let's say it's a 600 tree project. I just kind of, we just kind of landed on, with the numbers that you were buying, doing like 150 black locust, 150 false indigo, and then 300 of the rest of the fruit and nut trees and shrubs. And that also is the right number. So half of the species are that also allows full interplanting. So every production species has a nitrogen fixer next to it. So that also what that works out too. Yeah, I didn't get it's a weird feeling to plant fruit trees every 3 feet sometimes, and like, all right, what am I leaving them with? But it's also the rolling of the dice, like figuring out if we give them 5 different fruit trees, even though they're way denser than the final spacing, it's testing like, well, which fruit tree does best. And then super into finding other nitrogen fixers, even like herbaceous shrubs like Baptisia or something. Yeah, these are our main ones because you can get them like in bulk, cheap from the main nurseries, and black locust is stellar. Yeah, more support species, willow and cottonwood, that both of those are out there too. we just put in a few weeks ago, me and Thomas put in some more cottonwood cuttings into the berms. I went to one farm, actually I'll show a picture, that their worst corner of the farm had very clayey soil. The cottonwoods and black locusts did really well because that berm clung onto water more, and so they responded really well, even though you could at a glance think oh, this is the worst clayey soil, but cottonwoods really like that. And redbud and Kentucky coffee, which we just planted those out there. Yeah, it says the strata too, kind of which they take up and how high they get. And redbuds are just beautiful. Yeah, and I don't know how much nitrogen Kentucky coffee tree fixes, if it's significant. Oh, I said, but less significant source. I may have heard something, but also don't take my word for it. I've just heard that it's not really, as significant of a source as black locust. And sycamore and sweet gum. Yeah, I didn't know sycamore could be a fodder source. That's awesome. But those grow so fast, respond crazy well to water. Definitely emergent with the way it grows and just needs sun and reaches for it. And sweet gum. And these are the high strata main fruit and nut trees that we got. High strata is needs anything, it's full sun with some exceptions of temporary dappled shade, or maybe dappled shade as it's growing. Even dappled shade is beneficial as it's getting established for the first few years, but then it needs the full canopy in the full sun. And the two main shrubs, when we were picking out the tree numbers for the different projects, more shrubs would be nice to replace some of the fruit trees. Just to not have fruit trees, to have way more elderberries would be sick. And they're both medium to high, benefit from full sun, but also can be kind of in dappled shade some of their life. But if you open up the black locust, they'll really shine and fruit better. And I just did a little example of what I was shooting for with the initial layout. When I was for the projects, laying them out, I would do an example laying out, just the best arrangement that I could, knowing that all the numbers would kind of change, and that the last swale would be just apples and false indigo, but just starting out trying to use all of them in the best arrangement. And so this is at 10 feet apart. So this is the 4 paces, fruit trees at 10 feet apart, and then 2 shrubs, hazelnut and elderberry between those. And then, so that's pretty much a production species, a fruit or shrub, every 3 feet. That's what I was shooting for. And then because half of the total count is nitrogen fixers, then when you hand a bundle to a black locust or false indigo to someone, say, put one every other space. So then they go black locust, and then false indigo. And so that gets you perfect interplanting and 18 inches apart. So doing fruit trees 10 feet, shrubs in between, so then you have production species at 3 feet apart, and then nitrogen fixers. And then that's what I would shoot for, just to give the farmer a good arrangement. And then they're oh, so I need to keep this arrangement the whole time. But no, because the species will change, you'll run out of elderberries, and then just kind of roll with the punches and layer it the best you can. But this is what I would start with and shoot for. And this is it later on as things are growing, and then the black locust grows up but is pollarded, and the false indigo get cut, the shrubs are filling in, and the fruit trees are bigger, so that's what it would kind of look like a few years in. And the pruning feeds the production species below ground with nitrogen release, but then also above ground with the nitrogen-rich leaves. And that's it.
That's great, David.
Yeah.